Uh, Thank you all for joining the conversation today, and depending on where you are in the world, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to tell you about the challenges, opportunities, and our solution for the e-commerce industry when it comes to data analysis and understanding the customer's experience. I'm going to tell you what we have and why it is unique. So first of all, some introductions. We are SRIA DXI. The company is located in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States, founded by Srinivas Kalambi, an IIT graduate from Madras. I'm originally from Toronto, and Srinivas and I have worked together on a number of other companies in the past. The business is currently being run by Suresh Mahadevan and Ray Killebrew with assistance from Frank Harper, all in Atlanta, Georgia. Ram Mokavilli is leading the technical team located in Vizag, and Srinivas and I will be meeting with that team there next week. And I especially want to thank Rashid Jamal and his company Open-BDA for making my talk today possible. Open-BDA is SRIA DXI's exclusive partner in Pakistan. And for further details, you can get in touch with our representatives at Open-BDA through their Facebook page where this is being shared, or on their website. Since we are all over the world and located in different time zones, we'll take the questions. If you would write them into the comment box at the end of this video, that'll be fair for everyone who's in different time zones, who may be seeing this at different times, and it'll also give members of our team an opportunity to answer the questions. I'm going to start by being deliberately provocative and say that no one knows what is going on at the machine-human interface, and if we are going to use machines for interaction, and if we're going to interact with them digitally, which is not how human behavior has evolved, then we need to know more about what the experience of individual people are at that machine-human interface. We want this interaction, we want this experience to be a good one. And to be able to do that, we really have to know how people really behave at this interface. Well, great, we all want to know things, so what's the best thing to do? The best thing to do is to ask them. We all want good, we all want to be good, we all want to be better, but let's get a little more specific and talk about the interaction that's of most interest, which is the interaction a person has on a website or an app when they're specifically trying to do some kind of business, in other words, e-commerce. And in that sense, the word better or good means that you have a competitive advantage, and that's what we're going to address. But I think some of you at least can see that the problem can be broader than trying to sell, or the opportunity can be broader than simply trying to sell a product or a service in a commercial manner. Imagine the power of understanding the experience people have who might come to your website to sign your petition, or to vote, or to join your group, and being able to identify the behavior of someone who has come to your website for malicious intent, for trying to hack it. I think you can agree that those have that application has considerable value as well. Now, when someone uses your website or app, what do they want to do? Okay, they're coming to your site because you're offering some kind of service or product in which they're interested, they've done a search and they found you. And there they are. But what happens when the person actually hits your website? What is it that they want to do? What are they thinking? And what is their experience? And as you want them to have an experience that is as positive as possible, and you've designed your website to be as good as possible. You've spent all your time on search engine optimization and everything else, and graphic design, and your beautiful videos, and everything else. But you really need to know, what are people thinking when they are on your website? Are they having a good experience? And if they're not, you're going to lose that competitive advantage and your business is going to suffer. So how do you find out what people are really thinking when they're on your website? Well, as I just said, you ask them. And that brings to mind immediately a survey. And surveys are great things, but they have several problems. First, you need to build them. You need to write them. You have to ask the right questions. You have to avoid bias in your own design of asking those questions. And as a human being, that's very, very difficult to do. If I am answering your survey and I'm annoyed at the language you use in your questions, or your questions don't really seem to ask me what my experience is, I'm going to give you bad answers. I may just end the survey at all and be totally non-responsive. And that experience with your survey is going to alter my response to what was my experience on your website. In other words, a survey brings in an awful lot of bias and arm's length bias, which could give you bad data about what you're trying to find out. And if you have bad data, you'll make bad business decisions. Second, as I've just alluded, surveys are self-selecting. Only the people who want to answer your surveys are going to answer them. And if the survey is badly designed, you're going to get bad answers, as I've said. Worse, if you are asking the survey later, after the person has had the experience on your website, a day or two later, they've bought a product and that product has had a problem with shipping, which has nothing to do with your website, you're going to get a different response than if the shipping had gone very well and quickly. And that's going to bring a totally different bias to their answers as well, and it has nothing to do with the experience on your website. And finally, there's what people have called the Heisenberg uncertainty issue. That's a physics term, but what it philosophically says is that as soon as you observe something, you alter it. If people know they are responding to questions on a survey, that is going to change their response. What you'd really like to do is understand what they're doing while they're doing it. And that is our solution. To use the jargon of the day, our solution is to use crowdsourced data from real users in real time on your website or app. That's what we do. We collect data while a person is on your website or your app. We keep the data individually. We have what are called user vectors. We keep the data individually. We do not aggregate it, although obviously you can do that. So we look at all the users and record objectively what's going on. We're not taking a survey. We are just looking at the HTTP server calls and the communication that goes on while a person clicks and scrolls and swipes and watches and turns videos on and off and listens to things while they wait, while they change pages, while they move their cursor, and so on and so on. As you know, there are many, many events that go on when you're simply on a website or an app. We can also add events to this and tag certain things so we pay specific attention to them. Do they go to a certain spot on a page? Do they click a certain link? Do they download a certain document? And so on. Most obviously, we are very concerned with, do people on an e-commerce site go to the checkout page and do they actually check out? I'll talk more about that in a moment. Now the thing is that since all of this is invisible to the user, the person who is actually on your website, there is no bias. We have not designed a survey. We are not controlling the data flow. We are not controlling what is recorded or how it's recorded. And the person who is on the site is simply behaving like they would if no one were watching. So imagine going into a store that's owned by a human being, very experienced shopkeeper. He knows when you come into the store, by watching you, what kind of an experience you are having. He doesn't have to interact. He just has to watch. He can tell if you're really in a hurry, you want to buy a specific item and get out of the shop because you've got something you have to do. He can tell if you're browsing, if you're window shopping, if you have any intention of buying. He can also tell if you're in the store for malicious intent and you intend to pilfer. So imagine doing that digitally simply by observing the behavior of a person when they're on your website. And all of this behavior, indicates what kind of an experience you are having. Well, no news here. Any third-party analytics can do that. And surveys are great things. I'll mention more about them later. But what we do now is not done by anyone else. We take all that data, we apply some simple statistical methods, and we generate a numerical value that collects together and expresses all the components that were observed of your behavior on the website, and we express that as a single numerical value which represents your experience. This is our Digital Experience Index, or DXI. We do this for each individual. Obviously, we can take advantage of all users or just some users. We can select groups of users. We can even select just groups of the inputs and have what was your audio experience, what was your visual experience, what are the KPIs. We can look at subsets and groups of the inputs in subsets and groups of the users. We can apply all of the things that you would expect you could apply using standard algorithms. Further, and I think this is very important and gets missed in e-commerce, we don't know and we actually don't care who you are. We don't know if you are male or female, what your age is, what your income is, if you have a dog, if you're married, how many children you have, where you live, what kind of a house you have, if how many cars you own, or if you own any cars at all. We don't collect any personally identifiable information. We are only concerned, like that shopkeeper, about the experience you are having after you come into the shop and what you do inside there. I'll mention this again later because obviously knowing who you are and how you spend your money is of considerable importance in e-commerce. So we'll talk about that later on. But for the moment, what we have collected is unbiased information. We've generated a numerical value that can now be compared to another user's numerical value of their experience. We can generate a benchmark. We can compare that benchmark to other companies over your company over time. And it's all been done objectively and in real time. This data can be handled by statistical methods. We do this to a limited degree to generate the DXI, our Digital Experience Index value. Now, with all of this data in hand, machine learning algorithms can be used. Machine learning algorithms, can find patterns that are not otherwise obvious or can provide mathematical outputs that describe the patterns, and those outputs can be used by other algorithms elsewhere. They can find clusters and boundaries between the clusters, such as k-nearest neighbor, support vector machines. They can determine what is most important. For example, principal component analysis can tell you what is the major vector across your data space, and in descending order, what describes that greatest variance across your data space. We can use random forests, classification trees, decision trees, mapping, statistical correlation, and so on. I won't go into the details about these algorithms in this manner, and I'm sure you all know also that algorithms can be coupled together in a variety of ways, for instance as a perceptron, and that they can be supervised, unsupervised, or even semi-supervised if you only use part of the data as input. Now let me step back here and talk about surveys and supervised machine learning algorithms. If we're going to use an algorithm that needs to be supervised or trained, we need to know, at least in some subset of data, the answer before we start. Is the experience this person had with all of the data we collected good or bad? And we really are going to have to find a way to do that. Now we can simply say, did they go to a checkout page and successfully check out and purchase something? That would be a good experience, especially from an e-commerce perspective. We can also ask them. We can actually run a survey, a single question pop-up survey that simply says, did you like this? Did you have a good experience? Yes, no. A smiley face, a sad face. We could even have a slider from 0 to 5. We can do that in a small section of the population and get the data that allows us to use a training set for supervised algorithms. Now, obviously you can ask more and more questions, get more and more data to make a much more refined training set, but then you'll run into the questions I mentioned earlier. Now, what about the real data that we're all interested in here? What about the amount of money that a person spent in their e-commerce experience? We don't collect that. It is our client collects that. Of course, that is their business. They've got to collect credit cards and shipping data, and especially if you have an account that you have to sign into the store to buy or participate in whatever the store is doing, that is all in our client's hands. And that's all their personally identifiable information that they have in their secure databases. However, by correlating our data taken by the IP address and timestamps, we can correlate our experience data with any of the customers in our client's database. Did they buy? Did they not buy? Did they spend a lot of money? Did they spend a little bit of money? Which products did they buy? That has all been collected by our clients, and also that provides, as I've said, a clear way to provide supervision to training sets to supervised ML algs. Now, there is a problem with machine learning in that today it is almost inaccessible to everyone. Now, the algorithms have been known for years, decades, and in some centuries, like the Bayesian algorithms, for over a century. But it is only with the computing power today, and especially the telecommunications that are available today, that these algorithms are useful and are fast enough that they can be used in real time and for real life purposes. Solving this problem, making the machine learning algorithms accessible, is also a business opportunity of which we are taking advantage. We address this particular business opportunity by coding the algorithms inside a separate organizational entity and then having a pass-through license to our DXI corporate entity. This allows us, obviously, to present the DXI business as I've just been talking, but it also allows us to present to other people who may not have any interest in digital experience access to machine learning algorithms which have useful GUIs both for inputting data and for looking at the output. Please go ahead and write your questions about these in the comment box, and we can answer them more directly later. So just to finish here, we have built a tool, our Digital Experience Index, DXI, which measures and expresses as a numerical value an individual's experience on your website or app. I've given you an overview of how to do this, and as I said, please write your questions in the comment box and we'll be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.